This is outstanding. I have some true star power in the room with me today to talk about some of the things going on in Nashville, Tennessee that aren't necessarily on the up and up. Over my left shoulder, you will see Monty Mader. She's an activist as well as a historian and a public speaker on deconstruction. Over my right shoulder, I have the former mayor of Oak Hill, Tennessee, and current Tennessee State Senator Heidi Campbell. And with introductions complete, I'm going to get the heck out of the way.
All right, let's get down to it.
Let's do this. Talk about what's going on here in Nashville. So, the Tesla tunnel.
Yes.
Governor Lee announced that this was going to happen on July 28th. When did you find out that this was going to happen?
We found out about it on July 28th.
So you found...
by that, I mean all of us in the legislature found out about it when he announced it.
So when that article was released was when you found out?
That's correct.
So, and I was present when they took the vote to give the Boring Company the construction site. And to my knowledge, the parking lot that they are being given had already been sectioned off and given to them.
Right.
Is that legal?
You know, that is a very good question. Most people that I talk to feel that that is not legal. But here's the thing that's so interesting about that. We are consistently these days finding ourselves experiencing, people doing things in the government that are not legal. We see that with ICE. We see that with a lot of legislation that we pass here. And really the problem is there's nobody to do anything about it. For example, in Tennessee, we are already living in a totalitarian state. And so, yes, the answer to your question is it's probably not legal. But who is going to stop it?
Yeah, because there is no, who's going to hold the legislature or the governor accountable, especially when the federal administration has no interest in doing something like that.
Yep.
And so deals like this take a lot of time. Why, do you know how long that this has been in the conversation now? Has that been found out?
So it hasn't really been in the conversation. It was brought up about a year ago to our mayor.
Okay.
And our mayor is probably the most important gatekeeper on this issue because he's the one that represents the most people in the area where it's happening, right?
Yeah.
And after he was consulted about it and he said that he didn't think it was likely to pass council, radio silence for over a year, and then all of a sudden we hear about this deal.
So just completely behind closed doors for over a year. But they knew, at least for a year, that the conversation was happening.
Yes, that
Governor
is true.
Bill Lee did, not
yes.
the mayor.
Well, and also, I mean, I think that intermittently we have come to learn that he was involved in the conversations. You know, I have talked to people in his office, and I have come to understand that when this deal was first suggested, Elon Musk and Trump were very close. And as you know, every single person in this party is a part of the cult of Trump, and they'll do anything that they can to get close to Trump. So he wanted to make it happen because he wanted to endear himself to Trump. And then, of course, now here we are, and things have not gone that way, which was very predictable.
Yeah, I mean,
but
how many narcissists could you fit in one room?
Right. Exactly.
So, but my question with something like this is, what does Governor Lee get out of it?
Yeah, well, that is a very good question. I think that part of it was that he had already committed to it, and that ship had left the dock, and so it was just kind of going along. But I would not. I'll tell you this: I have found over the course of being a state senator that there is that kind of grift going on in practically every single department in the government. So there are a lot of friend and buddy deals, a lot of people making money off of Tennesseans and spending our tax dollars for their own personal benefit. And let's really not ignore the fact that really what happened here is the governor decided to give away our land and under the guise of a transportation project, but really for the profit of a private individual and a private corporation. Really also with no cost to that corporation. I mean, they even get to sell the rock that they pull out, which is incredibly valuable. That's theirs
I didn't
to
know
sell.
that. And
Yeah.
this is prime real estate where this is like
Right.
something that could have been sold if it was going to be sold. First of all, it's public land.
Yes.
And the public should be able to decide if it's being given away.
Right.
But if it was sold, it could have raised millions of dollars because of what could have been built there.
Right. Yes.
Which is, and speaking of the rock, because we're on a bedrock of limestone, and they're intending to blast
Right.
for 10 miles. We also get 40 inches of rain a year. Has there
Yes.
been any ecological, environmental, safety?
Not one.
Not one.
Not one single environmental impact study, nothing. And you are making what I think is the most important point is that this is definitely, it's not even debatable that this is going to cause some kind of issue. I mean, you can't go that far in Tennessee without having some kind of a interstice in the rock or something that will cause a sinkhole or something. So we really worry about the instability that the whole project is going to cause. And the water. I mean, we already have the
So much
water
water.
table is so close below the surface, and who knows what kinds of issues this will cause when it comes to flooding or the safety of our groundwater or anything like that.
And they haven't done any studies for groundwater or that kind of protection either.
Zero.
And so what about, so we have 10 miles and homes and businesses are on top of this.
Yeah.
What happens if there's a collapse? Has there been any conversation of, are the homeowners going to be paid back if there's damages? I mean, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of feedback from homeowners. What's the conversation happening
That's a
here?
great question, Monty, because the risk is all ours. So they get all the upside, they get all the benefit the Boring Company does, but all of the risk is your risk and my risk, taxpayers' risk, everybody out there's risk.
Okay. So, and with the Boring Company, they have a history of abandoning projects. So
Right.
they've abandoned several in Florida. In San Jose, they were disqualified for not completing their paperwork and refusing to give a financial statement. And in Las Vegas, the tunnel, the Vegas Loop that is supposed to be 68 miles long, is only 2.1 miles operational after 5 years.
Right.
What happens if they just start and they decide they're not going to do it and they leave?
Right. I'll share a little bit of inside skinny with you on this,
I'm
and
ready.
that is that I heard from a Republican who was working with the America PAC in Vegas and was hired to work with them on that Vegas loop, that he finally had to leave because there were too many people in that whole group that were just doing blow and hiring hookers and not getting any work done, and that he started to think that it really actually looked like a tax pass-through, that it looked like it was kind of more of a grift. And I have heard from other people that it looks that way. When you have somebody who has that obscene amount of wealth that Elon Musk has, the richest man in the world, a tax pass-through like this for him is like a cup of coffee for you and me. It's nothing.
Yeah.
And so there's no risk there. And, having all of this equipment on the property already, which was, as you said, there even before they got the lease to allow them to do that. All of those things are things that you can bill for, and it's an opportunity for them to find a place to put those dollars.
Well, and it makes me think of the Colossus supercomputer in Boxtown, where they began operation before they had permits for their turbines. They're supposed to have 15 turbines operational. They have 35, and we have heat signatures that 33 were operating at the same time. And now Boxtown has become the #1 place for ambulance-related calls due to asthma. What is going through Tennessee leaders' heads on the Republican side of what happens when the environment isn't safe to breathe anymore? Because
Right.
clearly these projects are extremely destructive, and the citizens of Tennessee are the one paying the price.
I'm so glad you're asking that question because it is the most important question. If we don't have a livable planet, everything else is irrelevant. And that's just one of many decisions that are being made. We made a wetlands deal last year that gave away our wetlands, and it's going to cause even more flooding than we already have. But another thing about that question that you just asked is, what are we going to do when something bad happens in one of those tunnels? Because we are not allowed to access them. No private cars are, none of our cars, none of our emergency vehicles are allowed to go in that tunnel. And so it's only going to be used by Elon Musk's cars. And so what are we supposed to do if, there's some kind of an emergency or,
Because they do have a habit of exploding.
Yes, Exactly. So there are all kinds of health risks involved with this.
Because that does lead into my next question. This is a single lane, Tesla only. There's next to zero jobs created except for maybe a few technicians. Nashville locals can't use it.
Right.
EMS can't get inside. What is the possible justification about the benefit of this for the Nashville community?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I'm assuming, a rhetorical question because the answer is none. I mean, there's none.
Have they given any reasons?
I think that the idea is it's being spun as, and even people that I'm hearing from who are emailing me or calling me and saying, hey, why are you against this? This is such a cool thing, are seeing this as a transportation project. They're seeing this as equivalent to, light rail or something like that. But it's just really not the same thing because of all the reasons that you just pointed out. And they're also talking about how it will alleviate congestion. But here's
Not
the
if
thing.
drivers can't use it.
It's not going to get not one single car off the road because they're all going to be Elon Musk's cars.
And where are those cars going to be stored?
Good question. Nobody has said. And that's the other thing about this plan. None of the logistics of the plan have been communicated to anybody who lives in Nashville or anybody who is a responsible person for representing this area. So we are all in the dark about that. And that is unethical.
And last year, Nashville overwhelmingly voted to increase their own taxes to have public transit. Like adequate public transit, which would alleviate the insane traffic we have.
Right.
Has there been anything put forward about actually establishing public transit?
No, and part of the problem with that too is that one of the main components of that plan that we voted on was a route down Murfreesboro Road, which is where this is going to go. So this is actually disrupting the plan that we as taxpayers and voters voted on because we're going to have to change the route because it's not going to be viable to actually concurrently be building the route underground and the route above. And I'll also add that the Boring Company right now is trying to make deals with people in Nashville for entry points into this route. And so the ingress and egress on those sorts of things is actually going to be problematic for people in those areas as well. So this whole entire thing is just taking off with absolutely no oversight or support from not one single person in the area that lives here.
Well, and when I was in the room for the vote, we spent an hour listening to people come up, and no one supports this.
Right.
And people are worried about the safety implications, the environmental implications, and it really seems extremely reckless.
It does, and there's also an historical black church right there that is the oldest, as I understand it, black church in Nashville, and it's close enough that surely that the problems that it's going to cause by boring that hole will threaten the stability and the integrity of that church. So there are, all kinds of considerations along the route like that.
Yeah.
But I think that we also need to look at, a building of that kind of prominence and think about how we can protect that. Those are the kinds of places that I see viable pushback coming from because we have seen that it doesn't really work when people in Nashville are pushing back against something the state's doing on any other grounds.
Well, and that was my last question on this topic in particular is, as local to Nashville, what can we do or what are the pathways to be able to stop this project that you see for both locals and businesses?
I would like to see more pushback. I know people are exhausted out there. It is exhausting. There's just something every single day, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's so important that we continue to step up and push back. I haven't thus far seen any protests or anybody, putting a petition together. So I really encourage your viewers out there, and thank you so much for covering this subject, to get out there and push back on this because we need people to speak up.
Okay. And my last question is not related to the tunnel, but do you have any thoughts on what may happen with the special election for Mark Green this fall?
I am very, very hopeful that we can pick up a seat. We've got some great candidates, and because it's a special election and because there's so much volatility right now, there is a possibility. And so please, please pay attention to that race. Get out there, support a candidate, and vote.
And the special election, the primary is in October.
That's right.
Okay. So we have to get out and vote for that.
Vote, vote, vote.
Senator, thank you so much for your work.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to talk with us about this so that we can get the information out to rally people to oppose something that could be really devastating for
Thank you. Thank you
infrastructure.
for all you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yay.